In January of 2021, the most important company in the American stock market for one insane week was a dying video game store and shopping malls. Its stock rose so fast that hedge funds lost billions. A congressional hearing was called. Trading apps hit the emergency brakes. And the people who caused it all were not bankers or billionaires. They were a few million ordinary people on an internet forum, armed with stimulus checks, rocket emojis, and one very specific piece of math. This is the story of GameStop. And fair warning, this episode is different. In every story we've told so far, you knew who the villain was by minute 2. In this one, people are still arguing about it. Explained as always, so simply a 5-year-old could follow along. To understand GameStop, you only need to understand one weird trick Wall Street does every day: betting that something will fail. It's called short selling, and here's the kid version. Imagine your friend has a toy you think is about to go out of style. You borrow the toy, promising to give it back next week. You immediately sell it to another kid for $10. Next week, when the toy is out of style and selling for $3, you buy one back cheap, return it to your friend, and pocket the $7 difference. You just made money on something getting worse. That's a short. But notice the trap built into this trick. If the toy gets more popular instead, you still owe your friend a toy. If it now costs $50, you must pay $50. If it costs $500, you must pay $500. When you buy a stock, the most you can lose is what you paid. When you short one, there is no bottom to how much you can lose because there's no top to how high a price can go. Enter GameStop. By 2020, the mall video game store was fading, downloads were replacing discs, and the pandemic had emptied the malls. Wall Street's hedge funds looked at it and saw easy money. They shorted it, and then they shorted it more. And then something almost comical happened. The total amount of borrowed and sold shares reached roughly 140% of all the shares that existed. Read that again? Wall Street had promised to return more GameStop shares than there were GameStop shares on Earth. More borrowed toys than toys. Now enter the other side. On a forum called wallstreetbets, a community equal parts stock analysis and comedy club, a man who posted under the name Roaring Kitty had been arguing for months that GameStop wasn't dead. It had cash, a loyal customer base, and a new investor pushing it online. He posted his actual account statements every month, gains and losses, in public. People laughed at him. He kept posting. And then the forum did the math that changes everything. If everyone simply bought GameStop and refused to sell, the shorts would eventually have to buy those shares back, at any price, because they'd borrowed more than existed. Buying would force the price up. The price going up would force more shorts to buy, which would force the price higher, which would force more buying. A rocket that fuels itself. It even has a name from the textbooks: a short squeeze. The same self-feeding spiral we saw kill Terra, except pointed at hedge funds, on purpose. So they bought. Teachers, students, nurses, gamers with childhood memories of the store. Some because the math was real, some as a joke, some out of pure revenge for 2008. And the forum said that part out loud. GameStop became a movement wearing a stock ticker. In January of 2021, the rocket lit. The stock went from around $17 to over $80, then past $300, touching nearly $500 at its peak. The hedge fund most famously short, Melvin Capital, was bleeding out in public. It lost over 50% of its money in a single month and needed a nearly $3 billion emergency lifeline from bigger funds. The forum filled with rocket emojis and a new commandment: hold, diamond hands, do not sell. And then on January 28th, the impossible happened. The trading apps turned off the buy button. Robinhood, the app where much of the army traded, suddenly allowed users to sell GameStop but not buy it. Think about what a buy-only ban does to a price. If the only thing anyone can do is sell, the price can only fall. And it did immediately. The little guys watched the casino change its rules at the exact moment the house was losing. It looked to millions of people like the fix was in. The fuller explanation is less cinematic and worth knowing. When you buy a stock through an app, the trade takes 2 days to fully settle behind the scenes. And the middleman, the clearinghouse, demands a security deposit from the broker in the meantime. When GameStop went insane, that deposit demand exploded overnight. Reportedly to $3 billion Robinhood didn't have lying around. Restricting buying shrank the deposit. So not necessarily a conspiracy, possibly a plumbing failure. But here's the thing, both explanations share. When the system was stressed, the rules bent, and they bent against the small players. The referee may not have been bribed, but the referee's whistle only seemed to work in one direction. Congress noticed. There were hearings within weeks. The app's chief executive apologized under oath. And Roaring Kitty, real name Keith Gill, a former marketing guy doing stock analysis in his basement, sat before the United States Congress, was accused of manipulating markets, and gave the single most famous defense in retail investing history. I am not a cat, I like the stock. His analysis had been public, honest, and by the way, right. He'd turned roughly $50,000 into tens of millions. So how does this story end? Messier than a movie. The squeeze peaked and collapsed. People who bought at $400 watched it crash back under $50. For every early buyer who got rich, there was a latecomer holding the bag. And plenty of them were the same ordinary people the movement claimed to fight for. Melvin Capital, the shorting fund, never recovered and shut down the next year. Robinhood survived, went public, and got hammered with lawsuits and fines. GameStop, the actual company, used the madness to sell new shares and pay off its debt. Arguably the sanest move anyone made. And Keith Gill logged off, a legend and a multimillionaire. So who was the villain? Here's the honest answer this series owes you. The shorts weren't cheating. Betting against bad companies is legal and mostly healthy. The forum wasn't cheating. Buying a stock and refusing to sell is just investing with memes. Nobody went to prison because for once in a series full of frauds, almost nothing here was technically fraud. And yet everyone watching felt that something unfair happened. That feeling has a precise address. The moment the buy button vanished for the small players and stayed on for the big ones. So the lessons for the last time this season. First, understand what you own and why. The people who did the math early made fortunes. The people who bought a meme at the top paid for it. Same stock, same week. The difference was knowing versus believing. Second, there is no bottomless bet. Shorting 140% of a company is the hedge fund version of Enron's Raptors or Terra's Seesaw. A structure that works until it meets the one scenario it can't survive. Wall Street's smartest are exactly as capable of building a doomsday machine as any turtleneck founder. And third, watch what happens when the little guys start winning. The market's rules are enforced most gently when the losses belong to the public, and most swiftly when they belong to the house. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's just where the whistle tends to blow. Every fraud in this series survived as long as important people were making money from it. GameStop is what it looks like when the important people start losing. The scam never changes, but once, just once, an army of jokers with rocket emojis grabbed it by the collar and made it blink. If you want more true stories like this, drawn badly on purpose and explained simply on purpose, subscribe. Next time, we go back to where it all began. The 1890s immigrant with a suitcase and a smile who invented the trick every villain in this series copied, and whose name became the crime itself.